Alright. Welcome back to Super Sentai Review, episode 409. This will be the last episode for a little while after I finish up Jaspion. So, basically, we're here discussing two Super Sentai movies. And these movies are Kyoryuger, 100 years later, and ToQger versus Kyoryuger. So, let me briefly talk about, basically, the reason why I'm including this one here. I'll talk about the movie itself. The main reason why I decided to review this now, because this is technically the last movie that I have previously seen, but I've never viewed this movie before. This is the only one left. And I was thinking of changing my mind and basically putting up a different series of ToQger, instead of using Kyoryuger. That was the original plan, but okay, let's just cut out of the bag right now. Basically, ToQger will be the next one after I watch Kyoryuger. Yes. Because, well, you'll find out the reason why when I get to it. So, basically, that's the reason why. And plus, basically, it goes to the end of the year. I don't know when I'll be able to get to ToQger, so I figured I'll get this movie out of the way. So, everything that pretty much basically I watched previously have been reviewed for movies-wise. I'll be more about this later on. So, 100 years later. The movie takes place in the year 2114, exactly 100 years after the defeat of the Boss Legion. So, we have new Kyoryugers who are assembled because, the Boss Legion is back, and they're led by Kanandra, who is now basically a wise god. Yes, her and Lakiro there. And they recruit 6 people who just happen to be the great-grandchildren of the Kyoryugers. And the people who they recruit here are the following. Let's see, future Kyoryugers. You have Daikon, Ichan, Naba-san, Sanjiro, Amini-san, and Upi. Now, it turns out most of these characters, except for Blue, all are the wrong color. And the reason is because Kanandra basically she couldn't find the other ones, so basically, Daikon is basically Kairu Navy. Ami-Nisan is Kairu Kayan, and I believe that she is supposed to be Daikon's sister. Yep. Oh, and if you're curious, who is the great-grandfather of these two? King. And the great-grandma is Amy. Yep. Ichan is so obvious who his great-grandfather is, it's Ian. Yep. And he originally was silver, and then of course we'll get to his color later. There is Sanjiro, who is the great-grandson of Sanji, and Rin, the girl who liked them in the show. Who, by the way, shows up in the movie in her last ever Sentai appearance. Which is interesting, to say the least. I'm not really sure exactly why they brought her back here. It's like, okay, so she appears in 2 episodes, get off I managed in one episode, and then she appears here, and that's it for her. Yep. Upi, of course, he's is Violet. And so I think he's a superstar. And he started with Violet. And he's a 3rd Violet. And all of them, well, they technically, they look like the great-grandparents. Nabu-san, obviously, because it's the same actor who played, basically, the original one. Yeah, it's the same guy. Let me look here. Yeah, it's the same guy. Pretty much the way everybody's pretty much played with the same guy as a descendant. Though, Naba-san doesn't have, like, the old man jokes, like, in the case of basically his ancestor did. So, they try to fight the Boss Legion, which are apparently led by, get this, 1,000-faced Gyros. Yep. Yeah. And of course, basically, they have some new recruits along with him. Like, there's a new version of Dagon, who basically is called a complete different character. You have Aspharon, who is, well, he was said to be, get this, Remorse. There is Shando, who is basically Daigo's is basically reincarnation of him. Yeah, his whole thing is that he's similar to his basically person reincarnation of. It's pretty much basically just an altered costume. And Hosugen is basically Akaran. Yep. And this time was a girl, not a guy, a girl. And Lakiro basically thought it was him, but basically they have no idea. Yeah. So, and of course they assembled, and of course they have some new monsters basically assembled for the future. There is the Four Seasons monster, and that's it. Yeah, the attacking Four Seasons monsters are basically rebuilt monsters. There is Gabo Faromi, who is a recreation of is a reincarnation of the Christmas monster they had. There is Haradomi. This one is, well, he is actually a rebuilt monster from the series, who is just basically repainted. Yeah, he's a repainted monster. Nasuro is reincarnation vacation one. Yeah, it just basically in their form is basically just repainted version. So they all get chastised. They basically chastise New Rangers. Oh, you have too much blue in your team. Technically, you have 3 Blue Rangers. Which, yeah, this is definitely true. And of course, you can't figure out what to do. And of course, that, well, basically, Ichun, Sanji, and yeah, Ichun, Sanji, basically Sanjiro, Upi, and Ichun all quit. Yeah, and also they give him special jackets because in the future, and also we have this Lakira has this fun moment where he's like, "Oh, another remake that'll work," and of course he has half my ticket anyways, a physical ticket. So yeah, and then eventually, also Daikon just sees Mini Kaotaro, which yeah, great to see him. Except he's white because he doesn't know his own color. And the only one technically got his power right was Naba. And he got basically his normal weapon. So, oh yeah, because they're all the wrong color. So, eventually, as Ubi finds out, thanks because he's a bowler in the future. Yes, he's a big bowler. And he finds out his goal by having a golden bowling ball. Sanjiro basically fights his great-grandpa, who happens to be Sandro from the show. And beats him and gets basically Torin Sor, who is a spirit now. Ichun basically is just thanks to revelation, he basically gets the right color. And apparently, in the future, he's a singer. Not a playboy, a singer. So he's picking up their colors, and then of course basically, well, Daikon basically takes him a while to find out the fact his color is actually red. And of course, Nichan basically becomes pink, obviously, with armor form. And it turns out the regretful one is actually the main villain of this whole movie. Yep, main villain. And apparently he wants to go back in time to kill the Kyoryugers when... And just by sheer coincidence, and of course Kanji basically points out though, they just happen to end up in the very area where the boss basically unveiled his final form, just by sheer coincidence. And he wants to go back in time and kill the Kyoryuger's past. But looking at basically, Daigo apparently knows the fact that this guy is actually his great-grand's future, which is kind of weird. So then, of course, basically, they kind of brought to the future to help defeat basically this guy. And using the Voltazords, eventually he's killed. And of course, basically, Yuki basically Yuri, yeah, basically, of course, he's who could be the great grandfather? Who is great grandson? Like, who could basically this one? And of course, Amy is curious about it too. And then Sanji basically gets beaten up by the girl who likes him because he forgot the fact that was going on a date together. Very interesting movie. And I like the fact they have. It's very interesting for what it was. It is. I find it interesting though. If all the Kyoryugers, only Sanjiro was the only one still left alive. No one else is, which I find that kind of weird. But that's what it is. But next up, basically discussed is basically, I kid you not, we're going to discuss basically, like I mentioned, ToQger versus Kyoryuger. And the main reason I decided to do this is because I watched it. And, excuse me, yep. Basically the reason why, because I watched this movie already, 7 years ago, and I had figured though, because it's getting close to the end of the year, so I figured though, why not? So, ToQger, the Sentai that Simon Bennett refused to adapt because he stupidly believed this. Excuse me, the kids are not into trains, despite the fact they are into trains. And I've heard mild controversy in this show. Well, due to the fact of the Megazord, it looks like a dick. I saw it transform, not really. So, I know the premise of the show is looking for their hometown and what their real forms are. And we can pretty much introduce the 5 main ToQgers, plus their 6th one in this movie, which I find that interesting. So the movie opens up basically with the Galaxy Express just operating normally, and then basically the station gets knocked out of its orbit and crashes, and then of course basically like the ToQger show up obviously, and then they're confronted by the pair of monsters, and of course the weapons don't work on them, and then of course the Kyoryugers show up. Yes, the Kyoryugers, and then, of course, like the bear, King stays behind and basically explains, oh yeah, they're basically looking for the creator of the boss, and he's here. So, and apparently get this, the Rainbow Express, the conductor, has actually heard of this particular person. He's heard rumors about him, but he's too scared to confront him, which obviously because he's a conductor. Also, apparently the series has a thing for people who drive trains basically have a puppet on their hand for a reason unexplained. So after explaining everything, and then of course basically then he leaves, they want to go fight, of course they can't because, well, they're Kyoryuger's enemies. But then of course basically we debut, the creator, and he's just called the progenitor. He just, in wood, perhaps moving until he becomes this shiny form, and of course his high priest forms an alliance with the villains of ToQger, the Shadow Line, which I love the look of these people. And fun fact, did you know that 2 of these people have actually appeared in Power Rangers? And you're thinking, really? They have? Where? Well, one of the members, Baron Nero, popped up on Ninja Steel as the host of the Galaxy Games, which all they did was replace his head in the suit. And Madame Noir popped up on Dino Fury. Yep, Dino Fury as the Void Queen. But if you're curious, was anything else in ToQger brought in Power Rangers? Nope. And it's not legal reasons, it's because another claim I heard of the reason why that they don't want to adapt ToQger is apparently the toy sales weren't very good. I'm based on what exactly? So, and of course, basically, one moment where you have, basically Uchi just waiting for a ride on a train, and of course, Shadow Line shows up, and it's a clockwork monster. So, and then we have the 6th Ranger show up here. Yes, 6th Ranger. His name is Akira Nagio. And this man is obsessed with killing himself. Yes. This place looks like a place to die. And Uchi basically works alongside of him. And, of course, basically they're battling the grunts of the series. Basically, the... what was the name of these guys? The Combat Kyros. Yeah, and basically they summon Clock Shadow, which is not a character from the series. Are the other Shadow monsters, are they from the series? Well, the Saber one, yeah, he's from the series. Change Shadow. Vacuum Shadow. Hammer Shadow, who appeared in 2 episodes. Finch Shadow, who appeared in 2 non-concurrent episodes, 19 and 39 in this movie. Coin Shadow, who's from episode 26. Table Shadow, who's episode 31 and 32. And Chair Shadow. Yeah. So they try their best, basically, and of course, at one point in the movie, they do form their mechs. Well, here's the thing about the ToQgers. It only appears once the whole movie, like very early on, and then just appears. And the Clockwork one, like, then he uses a little thing trying to basically de-age them. Uchi basically, I think Uchi, he gets the age of a baby, and the ToQgers get the age of children, which apparently is their true form, for reasons. And then, of course, the clock people hear, like, noises. Like, they hear, nin nin. And they check it out. And basically, they're confronted by the debuting Ninjanger. The third ever ninja-themed Super Sentai team, which were adapted into Ninja Steel. Yep, they battle his grunts, and they beat him. And... yeah, I like the suits for Ninjanger, and of course, yeah, in the case of Ninja Steel, I did kind of like it per se. I've heard it's described as mediocre. I thought it was okay. It's a review in the future, but I'm going to save it after I review basically a Metal Hero series because of the character props of that one. So, I'm like in the last movie where ToQger show up at the end, who actually... this is just basically like a misdirect. And just appear, and of course, the whole thing with ToQger is use imagination, while in the case of Kyoryuger is basically be brave. So, eventually after a battle, the Kyoryugers get knocked unconscious, while in the case of the ToQgers, they're basically stuck in child form. And of course, they even morph in child form, which is interesting. And here's what I also find interesting. They stay in child form when they're basically morphed. Unlike in Power Rangers, when they had a child be a Power Ranger, and they basically increased his height. Yeah. So, all thing is building up, and eventually, after some convincing, King convinces everybody to stow away on the trains while they go deal with basically the monsters, and of course they're confronted by monsters from their own series. They're saved by the Kyoryugers, obviously, and you have King, and by the way, the leader of Kyoryuger is named Right. Yes, that's seriously his name, Right. Where they confront the progenitor, and it's like, oh, I created the boss, like, okay, we're basically gonna battle you. Really good fight sequence. Like, oh, let's use imagination to use this Beast Battery, which transforms into a Dino Train. Yes, and he uses that to beat him, but he goes giant size, and eventually he's beat anyways. But, excellent movie. They also did this thing where they made giant size versions of the Beast batteries. I thought that was really cool. Yep. Fun movie. I would say it's not as fun as basically the previous movie, but this movie was just really good. It wraps loose end from the previous series. And of course, ToQger basically can go off on their own, do whatever the heck want. You could say this is basically goodbye for them for now, because they will return in another series. But not much else to say about these two movies. I do enjoy both of them. I will be reviewing ToQger versus Kyoryuger again when I review ToQger. But definitely next Sentai series will be Kyoryuger. Okay? But yeah, this particular view, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications, do the next like button. Well, I'm going to go ahead and watch Demon Lord Retry next. Okay? Thanks, you. Bye.